Good afternoon. I am Jim Fliss, the National Head of SBA Banking at KeyBank, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the second of a four-part webinar series on opportunities in franchising for Black entrepreneurs. KeyBank has provided the underwriting resources for this series, and we're honored to partner with both the International Franchise Educational Foundation and the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce. At Key, our corporate purpose is to help clients and communities to thrive. And we sponsored this series because we are focused on small business growth and success and opportunities for all entrepreneurs. The partnership with the IFA and the U.S. Black Chamber is really a wonderful fit, and it gives us the ability to get relevant and helpful resources into your hands. In our first webinar that we held on May 6th, we focused on the journey of two franchisors who provided their stories and the paths that they took to establish a franchise business. One of the panelists built the franchise business as a franchisor and then purchased and is running his own multiple franchise operation. We also focused on access to capital, where I and my colleague from KeyBank, together with a representative from SCORE Cleveland, talked really about the nuts and bolts of preparing yourself for business and how a bank or lender can assist you in reaching your dreams of franchise and small business ownership. And by the way, this May 6th webinar was recorded and it can be accessed through the U.S. Black Chamber's website. In today's webinar, we're going to hear from seasoned franchise business, business owners who will provide the inspiration, the information, and the motivation for you to take next steps. We'll also focus in on franchising 101, sort of demystifying what franchise ownership is, what it isn't, and the opportunities that are available to you. And we'll end the webinar with plenty of time for Q&A. Ricky Amos from the IFA will have more information on this process in just a moment. And as finally, as I had mentioned earlier, this is a four-part webinar series. We will be having two more webinars later this fall, and we'll be sure to make sure that you're all invited to participate as well. So again, on behalf of KeyBank, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. We hope that you'll be inspired and motivated by the information and resources available to you. So now let me turn it over to Philip Dunn at the U.S. Black Chamber. Thank you all and enjoy the day.
Thank you, Jim, and good afternoon, everyone. And I want to wish you all a happy National Small Business Month. I'm Philip W. Dunn, Program Manager with the United States Black Chambers of Commerce. I want you to know that the USBC provides committed visionary leadership and advocacy in the realization of economic empowerment. And we do this through the creation of resources and initiatives. And we also support African American chambers of commerce and business organizations in their work of developing and growing Black enterprises. So I want to take a moment to thank all of our registrants and all of our attendees here today at the International Franchise Association Is Franchising for You webinar. I want to give a special shout out to all of those folks who joined from the Black Business Focus Group, and I also want to extend a special greeting to those who will watch this recording later. So on behalf of the United States Black Chamber of Commerce, our president, Ron Busby, our board, and our staff, I want to give a special thank you to our partner, the IFA, and today's sponsor, KeyBank, and Jim Fliss for bringing together this amazing webinar packed with powerful information to help transform our community. I also want to thank the esteemed panel organized to deliver this transformational event to you all today. Each of them brings valued experience, knowledge, and insight to help those interested in franchising take the first steps toward achieving their franchising goals. As Jim alluded to earlier, now is the time for Black entrepreneurs to get involved in franchising. Franchise business development is expected to grow by 3.2% in 2021, but only 8% of establishments are owned by the Black community. The series today will focus on two roadblocks that Jim mentioned earlier: lack of access to capital and awareness of the unique franchising business model. So please soak up as much information as possible and let it prepare you for future opportunities in franchising. Lastly, I want to thank my counterpart, Ashley Mancini and Hayter, for their tireless work and commitment to bringing this webinar together. Now I'll turn it back over to you all. Thank you.
Philip, thank you so much for hosting us here today. Jim, thank you for those wonderful welcome remarks. I mean, it's such a delight to be here with everyone this afternoon to talk about this really critical information. Philip, and we are so delighted to be reigniting this relationship with the U.S. Black Chamber. When you look at our mission statements, our purpose and our why, they are so aligned, which is to support, find, and elevate small business ownerships, particularly in the minority community and Black entrepreneurs in particular. And we just couldn't be more excited than to be working with the U.S. Black Chamber on this very critical mission throughout the year, and look forward to many opportunities to work together. By way of introduction, for those of you who I haven't had an opportunity to meet before, my name is Ricky Amos. I am the Executive Director of the IFA Foundation here in Washington, D.C. I have been with the IFA for 3 years because I came over wanting to work on opportunities to help people find their small business dreams, to work on nonprofits that were going to elevate and support others in pursuing their dreams and their opportunities that are available in front of them. This type of webinar and this activity is one of my favorite things that we get to do at the IFA Foundation. To tell you a little bit about the IFA Foundation and its purpose. Our purpose is to amplify the best of what is and what will be in franchising. And so what that means day to day is we want to raise awareness of the franchise business model and demonstrate that it is a powerful force for good in communities, that it creates generational wealth opportunities and wealth creation for new entrepreneurs. It gives people systems and access to create small business success that they might not be able to do on their own. We have a phrase and a saying: you go into business by yourself, for yourself, but not by yourself. Stan was giving me a nod to make sure that I corrected that and got that appropriately. It's a wonderful community here in franchising. We are excited to introduce you to them. And then as part of the IFA Foundation, we have our Diversity Institute. And Diversity Institute leans into this mission of the foundation, particularly by trying to raise awareness and engage and support entrepreneurs from minority communities, underrepresented populations who are just looking for fantastic ways to achieve their own American dream. So the Diversity Institute could not be more appreciative of KeyBank for their sponsorship of this particular event. Quite literally, we would not be able to be here without them, and their commitment to the mission of raising awareness, providing education and support, both with regard to accessing capital and providing information on the franchising business model is truly unparalleled. So KeyBank, to Karen, to Jim, we thank you wholeheartedly for making this possible, and we look forward to continued opportunities with that. Now, before I turn it over to, I am told I am to give the logistical direction for everybody here as well, so I'll put on my other hat. We will be recording this event, and as we were sharing earlier, the recording will be shared post-event, and it will be posted on the U.S. Black Chamber's website for people to be able to access later. We encourage you to share it with your communities as well. One thing we know about entrepreneur communities is there's a pretty deep network. Share it with others who are looking for the access to this information as well, and keep in touch with us. Questions will be submitted through the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, so please submit those throughout, and then our speakers will bring those questions to the floor in turn. And with that, I am delighted to introduce and turn over the floor to Stan Friedman. He's the president of FRM Solutions. He is an IFA Foundation board member. He is a Diversity Institute board member, podcaster extraordinaire, and a franchise educator, bar none. Stan has been a huge part of bringing to bear educational opportunities like this for entrepreneurs looking to find their way to franchising. So Stan, with that, I will turn it over to you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Ricky. I wanted to let you just keep going. I was enjoying that, Ricky. Thank you very much. I'm really, really delighted to be a part of today's program. And I reflect back on my years working for diversity and inclusion in franchising, going back to 1997 at Blimpie International, and working diligently for many years on what was then called the Minorities in Franchising Committee of the IFA, which later became the Diversity Institute, I guess around 2007, to further embrace and include others from communities that we weren't putting our arms around and needed to, in order to further the work that we wanted to do to bring franchising to communities that were perhaps being ignored or underserved. And so this has been very gratifying work for me through the years. Not the least of the gratification has come from the connections, the networking, the people that have become part and parcel of my life and important to me through the work that we've done together, people that probably would never have otherwise known. I'm going to introduce you to a couple of those today, and we're going to begin our discussion today with Tim Williams of Williams Chicken and John Draper, who is with Veridian. John is a franchisee. Tim is a franchisor. Each of them has an integral part of the equation that makes franchising work, and their responsibilities and points of view are going to be shared in today's discussion, such that you can understand that the relationship of franchising for you in the audience could become one or the other. You may want to take a business that you already own and franchise it and become someone like Tim, who is supporting franchisees, or in fact, you may be like John, somebody who for years has been an operator and a franchisee and has grown into a large organization of franchised businesses. So I'm going to ask them each to spend a minute and introduce themselves. John, why don't I start with you?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Draper. Obviously, as Stan just mentioned, family's been in the franchise business for 50 years. Concepts that you would know: Burger King, Pizza Hut, Auntie Anne's, Coffee Beanery, KFC. Vast array of experience in all those formats, whether it's standalone QSR, airport locations, Army bases. And we pretty much have been in just about every format from a real estate perspective, and happy to be here.
Appreciate it, John. Tim, how about you?
Good afternoon, Tim Williams. I'm Director of Franchise Development and CFO for Williams Chicken. I've been part of Williams Chicken for the last 30 years. We've been around about 32 years. I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Hawath Williams, the founder and president of Williams Chicken, as I was cold calling doing commercial real estate. I spent my first 8 years out of college doing commercial real estate or real estate appraisal, and I stumbled into the life of the franchise world, which has been a wonderful thing for us over the last 30 years and good for me also. I've been part of IFA probably since 2002. I think I received my CFE in 2005, 2004. I think Stan and I received about the same time. So it's been a pleasure being part of IFA. It's been a pleasure being part of the franchise association. Fortunately, that Williams Chicken, we're a franchisor. We're one of the three African American franchisors on the fast food side, the quick serve side industry, and I'll get more into that in detail later on. But
appreciate it, Tim. So I'd like to start with a question that is an obvious one to me, but maybe will help the audience understand a little bit more about the value proposition that comes with being involved in franchising. And John, I'll shoot this your way. Out of all those businesses that you operated in your years leading up to today, you could have opened a John's Burgers or a John's Sandwich Shop or maybe a John's Fried Chicken, but you didn't do that. You chose the branded routes through franchising, which have obligations that come with them that we'll talk a little bit about in a few minutes. But what are some of the things that you see as the absolute reasons why it makes no sense to go it alone when you can do it with a franchise?
Yeah, I'd say the most overwhelming piece is, we talk about this thing about access to capital. Banks traditionally lend to things that they know or understand. And so, anything outside of their understanding or their matrix is not something that's bankable. Not just access to capital in terms of African Americans, but, folks don't get access to capital for, great ideas. They need to be proven. They need to be something that can have collateral and people believe in. So that's probably the first thing, being a young guy, trying to navigate being an entrepreneur, it's a lot more challenging to start a new concept. And there's just so many things that you don't know from, site selection, real estate, procuring food distributors. You got to worry about financials, marketing. There's just so many things that you have to do to build the brand. It's a lot harder to kind of accomplish that on your own. And like I said, the biggest thing is how do you get financing for an operation and get into business, and using a brand gives you the leverage to get in the door.
Tim, I'm going to throw the question to you as well, but I'm first going to ask anyone who's not speaking to please mute your mics. We're getting a really bad humming feedback sound. We don't know from where, but unless you're speaking, please put yourself on mute so maybe we can avoid that. There we go. Thank you, whoever you may be. Tim, let me ask you the same question from the other perspective. As a franchisor and building your brand to more than 40 stores right now, probably north of 40, what is it about the franchise business model that makes it make sense to you instead of just owning and operating and opening up more of your own restaurants?
Well, it was not so much for me, but was the founder and the president, Mr. Walter Williams. He came from the church's background, and he grew up in the church and chicken industry. Actually, he took his first job in college as a team member with churches. And by the time he finished college, he was a store manager, and he went on from there. And he just wanted to operate a couple of stores. But when he left church and started his own restaurant, a lot of the managers who was on brand, a lot of the managers that had worked with him, for him, in that circle wanted to come aboard. Well, by then, I was on board with Mr. Williams as real estate manager. When a few days in college, I was paying attention in business law, the franchising came up. I was doing the McDonald's days. And so when some of the managers wanted to leave and join Williams Chicken, we started out with operators grid. Then I said, Mr. Williams, we're close to on franchise laws. So we really need to reevaluate what we're going to do here. And that's when the franchise part of the world, as franchisor part of the world, kicked in on us. So when I talked to our lawyers, and they knew very little about franchising, so they referred us to a franchise specialist. And they said, yeah, you guys are verging really on the edge of the franchise law. So then we said, well, what it going to cost us to be a franchisor? And when they gave us that number, we like, wow, really? And so he thought about it, then he said, well, this is my opportunity to give back. And so he made the sacrifice to spend the money that it takes to become a franchisor. And that's one of the pluses and minuses of this business, being a franchisor. You know, the startup costs, it can be steep, because there are a lot, and especially if you don't put state that you're franchising in. So I would say, if you think about going the franchisor route, make sure you have a very good franchise attorney. Not a good attorney, but a good franchise attorney, because there's a difference, because the laws change from state to state, and you have to be aware of them. And the laws are very strict. And so I say, before you go down the road, just make sure you understand what it's going to take. But I will always say, well, you're a franchisor or franchisee, you need a couple things on your team. One's a franchise attorney. The second is a good CPA, a good banker, and a good marketing team, because you're going to need all phases of those things to operate a franchise.
Absolutely. And not all the time can one person do all those things. So an early stage franchisor has to really be ready to juggle some balls and have others on the team to help them in early days. John, let me ask you, what do you tell somebody watching us today that thinks, nah, there's no way I can do this. There's no way I could become a franchisee. I don't have what it takes to do that. What would you tell them today?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good follow-up to your first question. I think that everyone has a certain skill set that transfers very well in franchising. You've got to find the spot that you're most comfortable in, and then fill in the gaps, right? So that's what the franchisor really does. It kind of helps you have a playbook to pull from, really understand how you're going to get all these things done. I mean, it's not impossible at all. In fact, I would say that anybody could be a franchisee. You know, biggest hurdle, like I said, is finding a brand that really has a support system and can help pull you through in the places where you may not have that skill set. But it is definitely doable. I think the biggest hurdle is that one of the things that you're saying is that people just aren't thinking about it as an opportunity. And, you know, it's a lifestyle thing. I mean, it's not just you, it's my whole family's in this business, and it's just a part of us at this stage. And I think that those are some of the things that you really want to think about making those kind of selections. But it's very doable. You just got to have the right brand and the right financial partner so that you can organically grow as things get down the road.
Tim, what is it you look for in a franchise prospect other than the obvious things where Jim Fliss would tell us, you know, you've got to have X money down and a net worth of Y and liquidity of Z?
If you ask the young me, it was any brand that would take me. If you ask me today, my selection process is much deeper. Then I wanted a brand that I could identify with, whether it was the product or it was new. These days, new doesn't necessarily mean so much. It definitely is about, what does the financial team and the construction team really understand about the brand? We've been in brands where they've got a great model, the economics were okay, and at some point they just couldn't stop changing the model, and it just kept changing and changing and changing. That becomes very expensive, even for experienced franchisees. You just can't be in a position where things are constantly changing, and that's really what you're buying. So, top of mind for me is I wouldn't put $1 into a franchise if I couldn't at least get $3 in sales. That keeps you under the market, that keeps you safe. It gives you enough leverage within a banking system to, kind of grow organically. So I definitely pay close attention to financials, probably because I'm a CPA and finance guy by trade, but it is the most important thing. The second thing is what does the real estate do, right? If it's standalone, obviously there's a lot more costs associated with that. In most, concepts these days, you can do inline, which is a lot more affordable. But now you got to think about what are those real estate relationships? Who do you know? What other relationships do you have to kind of get you in there? I think it's important to lean on the franchisor for some of those things, but no one's going to know your market better than you. And so you really have to kind of dial in and understand those things for yourself. So again, real estate, economics, and then who's the team? Who's behind the veil of the great hamburger or salad that you thought was a cool concept. You can get yourself into contracts, because this is a huge contract and a large obligation. You can get into contracts with franchisors that don't make sense. And so, you really have to know that the person that you're, quite frankly, going in business with is going to have your back. They're going to support you with the things that you need. And I've got a laundry list of support things that I think are important as well, but I won't go through all those right now.
Let me turn the question to you, Tim. As a franchisor, somebody presents themselves to you that you see attributes in, but perhaps they can't muster the cost of what it would take to do a Williams Chicken. What do you say to them?
Well, I look at the individual first. The first thing I used to ask them once we get into the conversation, they have sent the application back in, is do you have a passion for what you're getting into? Do you have a passion for cooking chicken? Do you have a passion for being in the real estate, in the quick serve industry? Because if you don't have a passion for what you're doing, then it's going to become a job for you. And then a lot of people try to get away from a job to get their own business because they want a job. But I asked them, what is your passion? And I even asked them before I even discovery days, or they come out, I'll take them to the store for a couple of days, maybe for a couple of hours, and let them see this is what you'll be doing on the day-to-day basis. And do you have a passion for it? Because if you don't have a passion for it, then you're not going to put your all in. You can have all the money to create it, the time and flexibility, but if you don't have a passion for it, then I would recommend that you do something else. So I look for the passion. Then I get into the financial part. I have finance company that finance our franchise partner. So I let them do part of the financing. And so one thing about a franchisor, you have to build a team for your franchisee. And that's what I've been working real hard on over the last couple of years, is building a strong team for my franchisee. When I say a strong team, a good real estate team, a good construction team, a good marketing team, a good banking team or finance team. So then on our end, we focus on the training and the knowledge of how to operate a Williams Chicken. So as you look looking for a particular franchise to invest in, and I say from a franchise standpoint, make sure they have a solid team that can assist you in growing and getting open and support you. Because without a good solid team, then I don't think the franchisee or the franchisor is going to last very long without a good solid team. And as to what John said, it is important that you get along, you have a feeling, and you have a passion for what you do. We can put the teams together, but at the end of the day, it's your business, it's your operation, and you have to have a passion.
So I think the takeaway from that is it's not like just replacing a job. It's not going to be 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. It's more like having another child, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You're going to have to nurture it and help it grow and spend maybe a few years doing things personally that nobody wants to do, but you're willing to do them so that later you can do things that nobody else can do because you put in your time and grew your business. So, John, it's not a one size fits all proposition, is it? You rattled off big names like Burger King and, Wingstop and whatever, but people that are watching us have many opportunities in many other verticals as well that don't really cost quite as much for that, but they can still benefit from the culture and from the education and the ability to have teamwork in a franchise business, as Ricky said, working, not by yourself, but with people around you. You're working for yourself, but not by yourself. What do you say to others about what they can look into for resources and ways to find help getting started with their search for a brand that would make sense for them?
Yeah, I think, you got to right size it. I mean, like I said, we talk about the economics. I think that it seems sort of impossible sometimes in terms of some of the, liquidation, net worth, some of the things that they're asking you to do. It's got to be two sides. It's a two-way street. You got to know what it is that you want to risk. And I think it's, I hate to be the bad drummer, but there are a lot of brands that don't have the financial partner that's necessary for today. I would say prior to 2008, there were some opportunities in terms of you had some pretty, standard banking, standard platforms that would take, certainly larger brands, but there was something there. I think that brands have, they're trying to limit their risk, and so they don't really participate on the finance end. I think that that's incorrect. I think that brands should get a cookie cutter sort of financial model that, that banking partner or several banking partners already understand. There are a couple programs out there that did that back in the day. I can't recall the exact name. Well, Franchise America Finance, they had a program similar to that. And what they did is basically try to find what was the model, what was the most common denominator, and can this be duplicated across the country? And then, yes, we'll finance that. Yes, we do have a way to, provide finance or give some level of the capital stack. But I think the biggest part in the selection is lifestyle, really understanding what you're willing to risk. And, that lifestyle thing is huge because you got to understand that it isn't a 9 to 5. I don't know what you would put into it in terms of hours, but it's worth the risk on the other side of it, particularly if you got a great franchisor that's very supportive, knows how you're going to grow organically, and really just kind of puts a lot of, energy into your success. Like I keep going back to this thing, but your success is going to be down to watching the numbers every day. And you can get lost in that if you are, in the kitchen, running or doing prep or doing hiring out on the floor or doing table touches with customers. That part can get lost on you because it's a lot to wear, but you got to dial in on those financials every day.
So you have to do that in any business, whether it's franchised or not. Tim, what is it about being a franchisee that would mitigate the risk of failure for somebody who's getting into business by themselves for the first time, and they could do it on their own or they could do it together with a brand like yours? Share with the audience what it is that mitigates that when they do it as a franchise. Tim, you're on mute. We're not hearing you, Tim.
As a franchisor, I try to put myself in the chair and the shoes of my franchisees. That's why we own and operate 11 stores ourselves along with our franchise partners, because we see what they see every day. Even though we have the right to have you to remodel and advertising and things of the sort, we try to give our franchise partner opportunity to do that on themselves with themselves, because we don't know all their financial struggle. Yes, we do see their P&Ls, and yes, we do see that they're doing, but just because you change the floor model of the restaurant, don't mean you have to go back and make that existing franchisee change everything over too, because I look at them, those are the key components for us being where we are now. So we try our best to give our franchise partners the opportunity to survive, to make a living, and save some money and to grow. Because if you keep making them dump money into old restaurants, then eventually you won't get any new restaurants. And it's a good possibility that you're gonna lose some franchise partners. So we tell we're in the same boat our franchise partners are. We say we have the same issues with labor costs, getting people come to work, things of that sort. So I think the franchisees sometimes get lost in trying to keep most of them shareholders or that private investment company happy versus trying to keep their franchise partners happy, who's the one that actually is putting the dollars in their pocket through their royalties, through their distribution, or however they do it. So sometimes I think we get lost in the politics of the business versus what's growing the business. I look at my franchise partners as customers, and I tell my franchise partners all the time, if we don't have any customers, we don't have a living. So if I don't have a customer as a franchise partner, then as a franchisee, I don't have a living. So sometimes we forget that. And so until we get back to that point, I think you're gonna see our industry struggle a little bit, because we're more trying to satisfy our investors and our equity partners versus try to satisfy our franchise, trying to keep our franchisees happy, which is driving the business model.
In one sentence, I want you to tell me why somebody who's going to get into business today would do better to do so as a franchisee than as an independent business owner. One sentence or two.
Most lenders like seasoned franchise organizations. They feel comfortable loaning money to seasoned, proven franchises.
Same question, John. We need your sound back, John. There you go.
Yeah, support. I think that a strong brand and Tim was kind of leading into that. Support is the major factor for me. You've got to really dig in and be a partner with your franchisee. That is your customer. And I think the franchisors, as Tim's point, is they get lost from that. So support, that's the number one reason that you would get into a franchise business today.
So we have a question from the audience as to right in keeping with what we're talking about here. What's your opinion or expertise for smaller brands that are just getting started, whether it's a franchisor or a franchisee? The challenge is getting funding. What financial institutions out there are willing to take a risk on a younger brand, especially when they're just getting started?
Was that to me or to John?
That's to either of you.
I would say build a relationship with a strong financial company. There are a lot of them out there. I tell my franchise partners, you got to be in the room to meet these lenders. So that's why I'm trying to encourage my franchise partners to be a part of IFA, to go to the conventions, go to the multi-unit convention, and meet these lenders and these people, because if you're not in the room, you won't know. And that's probably the biggest part of our success, is that Mr. Williams invested in me to be in the room, so I get a chance to talk about our brand, meet potential lenders and people who are looking for opportunity. Just like, keep in mind, if a lender don't have someone lend money to, they go out of business.
So John, in the next segment, I'm going to be sharing some of the nuts and bolts that come with the obligations of being a franchisee. What makes it worthwhile for you to have to give up some of those things that franchisees give up that an independent entrepreneur can do any way they want? But what makes it worth it to you to do it that way?
I keep going to support, but it's everything that's baked in with it. The franchise community is the block that has pretty much built just about every organization. You get the best ideas, whether it's menu or service. The brand gets better over time if you're doing it correctly, because you're getting that support not just from the internal team, but the franchisees across the country are a great support base. There's, like I said, there's going to be things that you're really good at, and there's going to be things that that you need support with, and that's what you have to lean on. That's what gets you in the game.
Let me ask each of you if you have a final thought that you'd like to share for this segment. Tim?
I said, do your homework when you picking your a potential franchise that you want to join. Do your homework, learn about the company, learn about the C-suite, what I call it, the president, the vice president, the director of franchise development. Get to know them and find out something about them, so you'll know what you're getting into. Because it's a date that you're gonna change to a marriage that you're gonna be stuck into for a long time. And if you try to get out of it, it costs you. So make sure you're making a good choice when you decide to make that leap into that franchise.
John, a last thought?
Yeah, I would say, let's call this a hack. The franchise hack for me here is go and find an existing franchise business that's been operating, that has some seasoning, and that'll give you a clear opportunity to see what those financials are. And then you can improve upon those numbers. But that's something that's bankable. I think that's an opportunity for people to get into a business without having to go through the full structure and really get the same support, gets you to the front of the line faster.
Gentlemen, I appreciate you. We're going to have you back for Q&A and for some more discussion as we progress. So I'm going to ask Hader if he would to put up our deck. Hader is our backstage right-hand guy. Without Hader, none of this happens. Thank you, Hader. And let's advance it from there. All right. So part of what I was trying to get out on the table from our panelists is that franchising offers tremendous opportunity for people like everyone listening today to be able to step up, whether you've got the deep pockets to do a restaurant or maybe not, but you start with an at-home business. Doing it through the world of the IFA and through franchising provides you the leverage of having an organization behind you that's been around since 1960, whose mission it is to protect, enhance, and protect the business model of franchising. And we do that through our members. We do it through our suppliers, our franchisors, and franchisees. I'm a supplier in the IFA today, but I've been around IFA since 1997. And the heavy lifting that is done by members like me are what make it possible for Ricky, Amos, and others in executive leadership at IFA to guide the organization into a place that's safe haven for all of us. So as an individual business person, you might belong to a chamber of commerce. As a member of the IFA, you've got a national organization and the strength of its national lobbying behind you to protect the business model of franchising. And as such, franchise, it's by no coincidence that that strength of political power is there. It's because franchising contributes so much to the economy. It does so with advantages and disadvantages. As I was saying, there are certain things that you must consistently do at every franchise location so that your consumers are having similar experiences at every single location. If you walked into a Walmart store that had a sign above it that said Neiman Marcus, you'd know in a couple of steps that you're not where you thought you were going. Not that either is bad, but your expectation was one thing and you got confused because it didn't look like it was supposed to. Well, in franchising, there's the need for everyone to remain consistent in their operations and how they do their business so that consumers can trust the brand to deliver the experience that they expected when they walk into a franchise location. So that's kind of what I was talking about a little. You can't add a new flavor to the menu at your location because grandma had a great recipe and you want to add it to the menu mix. Franchisor he's going to frown on that. There's a consistency of experience for a reason. Hader, you can take us up. So in the franchise world, it all works when everyone understands that they've got a role to play and that they will contribute to it. Franchisor's role is to provide opportunity and to make certain that you're getting the very best of everything available to you. Franchisee's opportunity is to execute and put heads down and deliver. It's kind of like a coach on the sideline calling the plays, and then the quarterback going in and running them. And the team behind the quarterback's got to be on the same page as the quarterback, or it kind of all falls apart. Hader, take us to the next one, if you would. So many people don't really understand what a franchise business is. They think it's, okay, McDonald's. Well, it is McDonald's, but it's not just McDonald's. It's a business strategy that enables you as a small business owner to benefit from tools and resources that might not have been available to you if you'd have gone the route that I try to ask our guests, our panelists, why not just do John's Sandwich Shop or John's Pizza? Well, if you did John's Sandwich Shop, you might be able to afford some local advertising. If you did Subway, you might have a commercial on the Super Bowl. In either case, you're still a local store owner operating a local store in your local community. But one way, you've got the power of that brand behind you, delivering things that you could never have done on your own. And if it's a smaller brand and it's not a brand yet that's got the cachet or marketing ability of a McDonald's or a Subway to do a national commercial, they at least have systems and they have tools and they have opportunities for you to benefit from the collective of the brand, no matter what size it might be, so that you're paying a franchisor for the intellectual capital and for the constant evolution of what it is they bring to the party to enable you to deliver 7 cents or 6 cents on every dollar that you earn to them to keep doing it. Next slide, Hader. We talked about the power of franchising on the economy. I'll share 2 sets of numbers today because we've had this thing called COVID that's kind of upset our metrics over time. But if you look at pre-COVID, over 780,000 franchise businesses across 300 lines of business. So that demonstrates clearly it's not just restaurants. Franchising's generated 9 million plus jobs, direct jobs. And if you look at the jobs that are created by those businesses that support franchising, another 9 million jobs created there. So franchising is responsible for about $890 billion of economic output in the US, and it continues to grow at an incredible pace that exceeds non-franchised business growth. Hader? Post-COVID, well, nobody's bulletproof, folks. Franchising took a hit too. We lost franchise businesses. But the good news is that the projection by the end of 2021 is that we're going to outpace where we were going prior to COVID. So we have seemingly recovered, still recovering, still many that hurt, but we're in a better place than some that are in business outside of the domain of franchising. Next slide, please. To the point that I made about it's not just restaurants. Over 120 industries, over 300 lines of business. If you can systematize it, you can franchise it. You'd be surprised to hear of brands that exist with names like Pooper Scoop, or, there's Walking Dogs has been franchised. So there is a tremendous opportunity for almost any disciplines to be able to grow a business as a ZOR or a franchisee. If you can systematize it, you can franchise it. As Ricky talked about earlier, you're in business for yourself and not by yourself. In many cases, there's no previous experience needed in some brands. They'd rather you learn what they need to teach you from scratch, but they will look for the background of either business or finance or some of those core competencies that they need you to bring with you, and then they can train you on the rest. Again, disadvantages. It's not for everyone. You can't be completely independent. You can't mold the clay and do grandma's recipe, as I shared with you before. You've got to be willing to contribute to the good of the order. You do that with your continued ongoing fees and advertising contributions to the national brand funds. And you have a consistency of experience element that comes into play as well. Franchisors are going to be visiting your stores. They're going to be making certain that you're up to brand standards, and that poorly performing franchisees aren't bringing down the whole brand. So there's an obligation there to not just your 1,200 square feet, but the impact that it can have on others. So that's an important consideration when considering franchising for you. Next slide. Evaluating, we heard a good bit from both Tim and John. Do your market research, compare the competition, understand where you fit in the culture as well as anything else. You want to know that the franchisor has enough financial strength to take care of his own payroll, much less support you. And you do that talking with existing franchisees. You do that through the disclosure documents if they make financial performance representations. I heard it once, I heard it twice, I think 3 times from Tim Williams. Don't hire any lawyer, hire a franchise lawyer, hire an accountant, a CPA, professionals who specialize in franchising. Understand the disclosure document and consult an attorney who is a franchise specialist before you sign anything. And of course, purchasing a franchise is like any other investment. It comes with risk. So make sure that you're signing onto something that's got not a trend, just trendiness, but that there's demand, there's competition, your ability to operate the business, there's name recognition, ongoing support, and that you've got an upside and growth opportunities for growing your business long-term. Franchisors are going to look for candidates who've done their homework, who have the financial capital or it's available to them, and that are eager to be taught, not only from them, the franchisor, how to learn, but also the ability to train others, because you're going to be bringing people on who you have to team up and train up and get ready to support your business and your operation. You want to have a history of success in dealing and interacting with people. You have to be a motivated, outgoing type person who's willing to completely follow systems and demonstrate that to the franchisor before he's going to be or she's going to be willing to put 10 years worth of agreement on paper between they and you. So some of the keys to success: begin with the end in mind. Know what you need to have. Make sure you've got enough money and working capital to, plus that number up. If they tell you need 15, make it 20. Better to have more and not need it than to have less and wish you had more. You have to be willing to follow systems. You must have the support of your family behind you. Recruit the best people you can and treat them with the respect that you would expect your franchisor to give to you. Be willing to learn and to teach your employees. Provide great customer service and experience. Be a part of your community and stay in touch with your franchisor and franchisees, because like anything else, you get a cell phone, you get software, you get a computer, you get software. Your software is updated all the time automatically. Well, if you're not staying connected with your franchisor, updates in your system are coming your way, but you're not dialed into them. So stay connected and always be part of the ecosystem that is a part of your franchise. All of this is brought to you today by the IFA's Educational Foundation in the goal to enable you to know that there are tools and resources available to you, underwritten by generous sponsors like Key Bank, supported by the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce, the IFA's Diversity Institute. There are programs like SCORE and others out there to help you learn more about creating a business plan and providing the technical kinds of experience that are needed in order for you to build a business plan and start the idea of seeking business ownership. We do that through the IFA's Diversity Institute. We do it through IFA's Vet Fran program. We provide resources through both programs to try to bring those who would think otherwise. Franchise business ownership, you must be talking to somebody else. You're not talking to me. Well, we are talking directly to you, and we believe that opportunities abound for you to be able to get into a franchise business, whether it's a small state work from home business or whether it's a big box restaurant. Those questions are individual and unique. The things that are universal are that there are of those of us out here that are very, very willing, able, and hopeful that you'll give us an opportunity to answer your charge, to answer your call, to help you learn that you can be in business for yourself and not by yourself. I want to leave time for Q&A, and I have seen messages flashing across the screen, but they're not up in front of me now, Ashley. So why don't you help me with those and see if we can answer some questions for the audience, and the panelists can come back and help me do that. We're being asked a question about SCORE. Does it assist in the process of finding a franchise lawyer? I don't know that SCORE will recommend attorneys. Don't know that they won't, but that's not something that I think would be in their scope. I think that their advice would be that you need those, though, and maybe they can direct you toward resources or places to find them. I don't know that they would directly engage in referring one or another. That just might be a subjective question. For one person might deal with that one way and another completely differently. Any other questions coming through the chat? Looking but not seeing any, so come on back to the panel. Panelists, why don't you jump in here and join me with some feedback and comments on what we've just listened to on this slide deck, and feedback would be welcome from you guys on this.
Well, Stan, I share my franchise partners that it's always good to have a surrounding cast with you to bounce things off of you. And I always tell them, I say, if you pay your attorney, listen to your attorney. You pay your CPA, listen to your CPA. Probably one of the best investments I have when I outsource my marketing part of our corporation, because that's not one of my tools that I have in my toolbox that I can be efficient in. So I learned in the role, since I've been in this role, to be efficient at what you do, then hire somebody else that's better than you are at doing that. So if you think about trying to be a franchisor, I would say make sure you have all the tools surrounding you to give yourself a good, sharp company, because your franchisees is going to demand that. You know, your franchisees is going to need help when they have their grand openings. They're going to call you when they need a plumber. They're going to call you when they need a electrician or an AC guy. So if you're thinking about getting into the franchise side of this business, make sure you have all the tools in your toolbox that you need to be successful. And that way you keep your franchise partners happy and your chance of success and surviving and grow will be better. As I have focused more on our franchise growth versus store operation, I have seen our franchise grow because I have put more tools in the toolbox to work with.
John, what about you?
Yeah, I saw a question pop up about what would be one of the first things you do if you had a brand that you wanted to franchise. There's a couple of things I think are really important. One, before you even start that process, you definitely want to just get familiar with the industry as a whole. I don't know, there's probably 9 to a dozen conferences throughout the year. Can't wait to get back to them. But there's a lot you can learn there. There's tons of people. What I love most about this industry is everybody hospitable and helpful. And so you'll get a lot of resources and a lot of information about just, how to go in that direction out of one show. So I think that's one way to sort of organically get integrated into going down that process and going down that lane. And then, we mentioned the attorney. A good attorney is relative, but I do think that a good attorney in the franchise space, you'll probably meet them at a conference because the good guys are there. They're at all the conferences, and that'll help you sort of figure out costs. It'll help you figure out how to really put together the right documents. The one thing I would challenge franchisors and franchisors do get lost from the value proposition that's available or should be available to a franchisee. My challenge would be is to get more intimate with your franchisees, really understand their financial health, and not just what their business model financial health is, but their personal financial health. That's going to allow them to grow, what ultimately allows you to grow. I think one of the things that has been challenging over the last decade is, prior to 2008, and I'm sure everybody on here that's in the business can attest to this, there wasn't a bunch of technology in the business. I think we still had dot printers in Pizza Hut. I mean, there's just a lot of things that have changed over the last, 10 or 12 years. But a lot of that got outsourced. And I think we got to go back to that. We've got to make the investment in the technology as franchisors, so franchisees are actually getting a full system, right? We're paying fees, you're paying marketing fees. You need to be able to really dial that value in for them. And I think that's where we're falling a little short, and you'll start to see brands that don't make that investment quickly start to lose brand share, market share, and ultimately dollars.
We have a question from the audience asking that in order to become a franchisor, are there companies that help with building the processes that help the franchisees? Do either of you want to jump on that, or do you want to leave it for me?
The answer to that question is yes. There are a lot of consultants out there. They specialize in helping franchisors be more successful and grow and build their business. So probably the first place I would recommend, come to IFA convention, get to know the people, be in the room, and I think you can find the right resource that you need. I'm a big fan of IFA, and there's no secret about it, because it taught me a lot how to operate our business. So I'm always going to be a big supporter. I'm always probably push towards the joining IFA, because the resource is unbelievable there, and there's a lot of good people inside the organization. So if you're really trying to get into the franchise airport or franchisee, I would say start out by going to your first convention and learning and get to know some people, and go to some of the classes and some of the seminars that are offered at those conferences.
And we don't need to wait. We don't need to wait for the convention. You could go between now and then. You can log on to franchise.org, and then just kind of arrow around, scroll around, and find the supplier forum and its network of professionals. And categorically listed there, you'll find a tremendous number of people in very many disciplines, from software to accounting to operational support to all types of marketing resources and tools. So you can find a great many resources before the convention, and then go to the convention armed with the things that you're looking for and meet the people there that we hopefully will be able to get face to face with again as we'll be in San Diego for the next convention upcoming. Got another question pointed to you, John. And the question is, can you speak to franchisee expectation of marketing from the franchisor?
Yeah, the bigger the brand, the bigger the push. I think that, the word there is brand. When you have larger brands, they have the bandwidth to do traditional media, and can really kind of dial in to push traffic, and then you can convert that. The smaller brands, and this is just my opinion, so I don't want to ruffle feathers. I think smaller brands make the same ads that big brands do, but can't have the sort of same power and push in a market. So I would push back on that if I'm a, smaller. And when I mean small, I mean, 500, 1,000 units or less is probably a brand that needs some local support. And so I would, try to work on your local contribution. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that franchisees make, is they don't spend enough marketing. If you're paying 2, 3, 4% to a brand, if you've got some sort of local reimbursement, I would take full advantage of that. But you probably need to double that again in terms of your spending to really, kind of bleed in. I think that brands don't do enough marketing. And what you have now is an environment that allows you to kind of control it a little bit better. So I would use, ads, whether it's Facebook ads, Google clicks. I would use those local branding and social media platforms to help push. And then there's other unique ways that you can use sort of PR to leverage that as well. But I think, smaller brands are at a little bit of a disadvantage because they are paying a lot of money to a brand that can only really supply them with, sort of hand-to-hand platform stuff and not big media. So you've got to do that stuff on your own.
What do either of you want to speak to in terms of involvement with the local community and marketing in the local community and becoming visible and utilizing the power of your brand to bring leverage to your local business through community involvement?
Absolutely. That's what we do. We're probably one of the few brands that do not collect advertising dollars from our franchise partners, because we feel, like I said, I try to put myself in their shoes. And what we try to get our franchise partners to do is to take those dollars and you get involved with your community within a 3 to 5 miles radius of your location. Here in Dallas, where our corporate home is, the majority of our restaurants in the state of Texas, we do a lot of grassroots type marketing. I have a great marketing team that keeps me in tune of where, when, and how to get our message across to our customers, get our message across to our franchise partners. And it works. It's because our logo is dedicated to serve, grow, and give back to the community. And that's what we try to do. And we find that more cost effective in building a rapport with our customers, because we're there in the schools, local churches, and local organizations, supporting them, and in turn they support us. And my franchise partners see the ones that take those dollars that we don't ask for and put it back in the local community around their stores, tend to have a better volume store for sales wise, because they do show their community they do care about them, and also that they want to push their product.
Philip, I'm going to bring you back into this conversation. If you can unmute yourself for a moment. We have a question from someone wanting to know, what, if anything, can a Black Chamber do to engage with franchises to get them to consider new markets, such as in upstate New York?
Thank you, Stan. And I saw that question come through, and I really had to think about this, because I thought about, Williams Chicken is primarily located in the South, right? So how would we, get together with a franchised organization to bring them to an area where they're traditionally not found? And so one of the things that the Chamber can do, specifically at the USBC level, is to identify those high-performing franchise organizations and then try to match them into markets where they're traditionally not found. Try to take a look at the economics that John talked about earlier, and see where it makes good sense to bring them in. Maybe it's coming in to visit, or maybe it's taking a look at competitor franchised organizations, and then developing that relationship so that over time, when those opportunities are able to come to fruition, we can actually work to help support a franchised organization moving into a new market. So that's something that I can definitely take back to Ron Busby, our president, and really try to identify those opportunities where it makes sense, and not try to force a franchise. I mean, I've had Williams Chicken before, so I'm a big fan of it. But you want to make sure that it moves well throughout the country, or different types of franchise organizations move well throughout the country. So that's an action item for me, is to take that back to Ron Busby to see how we can be more engaged with franchised organizations, in particular with IFA as well.
My panelists, 70% of franchise systems have a fee of $30,000 or less for initial point of entry. 75% of franchise systems require startup capital of less than $250,000. So while we're here talking about bigger businesses with Tim and with John, I think that's a tremendous inspiration for those in the audience to understand you really can find, out of those 300 lines of businesses, opportunities that can fit your pocketbook. It's like buying a house. There are houses out there for 50,000 and there are houses out there for 50 million. You just need to know which part of the spectrum you can work on and afford to be on, and then go find opportunities that will allow you to get into business for yourself and start working on something for yourself, not your next job. Gentlemen, I want to ask all of you to contribute with anything at all that would inspire this audience to take the leap, or to help them believe that they can take the leap. Jim, I'll bring you back in for this as well, and share any parting thoughts with the audience about that might help inspire them to take us seriously when we say we're really here to help.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as we've been talking about, there's literally thousands of different franchise concepts out there at different price points, right? So a lot of what we've talked about is doing your homework, sort of going through a process of looking at your own interests and needs and background, what can fit your pocketbook. But remember, there's lots of resources, so when you come to the bank, I would encourage you all, by the way, if this is your first session, go back and listen to the webinar, the prior webinar on access to capital. And that's where we go in much more detail in terms of what you need to think about in terms of your financial plans, your projections, and that can be very daunting, but outfits like SCORE and others will help you through that process. There are people that can help you whittle down that 3,500 different franchise concepts into ones that you think might be a good fit for you, for your background and for your pocketbook. And then I would encourage you to go deep, do your homework, ask a lot of questions, and there's no shortcut to get through that process, but a lot of resources around you to help support you.
John, I'd like some words of inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, I would focus on the few and not the many. I think that there definitely are, 30,000 brands that you could attach yourself to. I think the one that's going to speak to you, don't be afraid to, have a conversation with franchisees. You'd be surprised how open and honest they'll be about what they're doing, what that lifestyle's like. I would say that that's probably been the most beneficial, is really understanding what the franchisee is seeing every day. So I would encourage you to go out and talk to people that are in brands that you think are important. There's also, and I say as a franchise hacker, there's things that I think are sort of the next wave of franchise companies that people should think about, and that is, the education space. I think that what COVID taught us is that there's a lot of things that we can do from home, or we can do in a different way. And I would encourage people to look at the education space. I also would encourage people to look at brands that don't take a lot of resources in terms of, real estate space, and have a limited product menu.
Tim, what about you?
I would say, like I kind of say earlier in the podcast, is that find something that you're passionate about. Because you're not passionate about it, then you're not going to put your best foot forward. And I always say, if you can have some skin in the game, you tend to work a little harder because you have something to lose. But at the end of the day, I find out, are you passionate about what you want to do? So there's a lot of different brands out there. There's a lot of opportunities out there. But make sure that you're passionate about what you get into, because if you don't, then your opportunities get a little less for us being successful at what you're trying to do.
Philip, can I throw back to you?
Thanks, Dan. I thought about this question, and then Jim sort of alluded to the May 6th webinar. On that May 6th webinar, we had Cal Golden, who runs a franchised organization, Wingstop. And he talked about the decision he made to take the leap and step into franchising. And, when he went to tell his family about, he's going to leave behind, everything he's ever, worked in his career to start a Wingstop franchise. The response was, Daddy, what are you doing? We're going to be broke. And he said to his daughter, he said, if you actually stop and think about it, we're broke already. And so what he was saying was that basically he would rather take his efforts, his energy, his business skills, and put it to work for himself, especially in something where he would have the support in a franchise in order to be successful. And fast forward so many years later, he's got a strong relationship with IFA. He's well known and respected by everyone on this panel. And he's run some amazing franchises, and he's impacted the lives of so many others as well. So think about, the reward on the backside. Think about the support that John Draper mentioned, and then partner it up with passion that Tim Williams talked about as well. And I think that that'll help many of us decide upon which direction we'll take. I know certainly at the USBC, we want to help make, all of your entrepreneurial ambitions happen. We want to try to help you along the way. And so hopefully you'll take those words, and if there's a decision to be made today, you'll make it on the side of franchising.
I want to add a couple of things myself, and one of those is going to have me do something that I run the risk of doing by going off script. So I see on my screen that we are visited by John Draper's senior, JD. If you're here, why don't you unmute yourself and get prepared, because I'm going to throw a question your way if you're able to unmute for me. One of the biggest things in franchising that I think is a critical opportunity is for people to be able to start their businesses, maybe with that one little Subway or one little store that they're an owner operator of, and then build an empire. And building an empire looks like becoming corporate again to some, but you're still owning your business. Now you're owning multiple businesses. Franchisors become franchisors for the purposes of scaling their business. The best way for them to grow their brand is to invite other interested people who share vision, values, and ethics with them as franchisees to come on board, and together they continue to build that brand. Then some in that community of franchisees may start out with 1, 2, or even 3 units, and they're starting to scale their own empire. And then they build an organization that starts to build more brands, and they start buying other brands that are compatible perhaps with the ones that they've already got. And you find franchisees like John Draper's organization that become franchisee organizations that are in some cases bigger than franchisors out there, and literally build wealth through legacy. So I ran the risk, and thank you for unmuting Mr. Draper. JD Draper is a member of the IFA Board of Directors. He's a member of our Diversity Institute's leadership, and he's the proud dad of the other John Draper, the young one that we've been talking with all day today. But what a beautiful thing is there, more than being able to bring your son or your daughter into your business and take that business to the next level. JD, I'm going to ask you to just share a pearl or two, because you're here and it would be a crime not to hear from you.
Okay, so Stan, you do run the risk of a challenging situation, but let me begin by saying you have been an excellent orator communicating the importance of franchising to all that are listening. I will begin by saying it relates specifically to John and my daughter Angela. I started out in Burger King as a district manager, taking them from store to store, having them sit in the back of the seat of the car with some French fries while I went in and did my inspections. I literally talked to managers and let them hear that interaction, and they grew into the business. That's just my story, but each of the people listening have their own story, and family is what it really is all about. That's one of the things we get from the IFA, the International Franchise Association, is a family relationship. I went down the road of restaurants. The folks on this call can go down many other roads. And I'm working, just to put a little buzzsaw out there, Stan, I'm working on a big fund to bring in big opportunities for some of these areas where franchisees have had a struggle getting into what we call the desert markets. So I got some things going on there. I'm also working with some projects with the historic Black colleges to put together some training programs. So we got a lot of things that we're still doing, but at the same time, it's the ability to pass on the opportunity to the next generation. And I certainly hope if it's not a daughter or a son or a sibling, it's a cousin or an uncle or an aunt, it's somebody in your family that you can connect with, because family is ultimately what this business is all about, family.
So here we are, 2 generations on the same webinar. And that's just a look ahead for you in the audience to wonder, is it going to be you that's going to start the legacy for a family and pass the baton? Or might it be the other way around? In either event, though, something else that we heard from Cal Golden on our May 6th program was, what are you waiting for? You know, if you're already in your 40s or in your 50s, Cal was pretty eloquent in the way he described it. I think he said life expectancy in America today is about 74 or 76, whatever the number was. And if you're already 45 or 50, you're 2/3 dead. What are you waiting for? And so I say the same here to you today, is don't wait, pull the trigger at least on educating further. And through the resources of the IFA's Education Foundation, the US Black Chamber, Key Bank, other interested parties that are anxious to be helpful in helping you get there. There's too many reasons for you to do it, too few to wait. And I think there's no better time than today to pull that trigger. I also want to call out somebody who I know is listening, but they're not here on the call as a speaker. But while we've got John and John Draper Jr. and JD demonstrating generational growth through franchising, earlier today, I commented to somebody on another call how good it feels to have people like Carolyn and Charles Thurston part of our universe in the IFA today. So the Thurstons are a couple in the Carolinas who just 5 short years ago became franchisors of a new brand called Wisdom Senior Care. So here's a brand that's what we talked about somewhat earlier today, a younger brand, a newer brand, just getting out of the gate, 5 years young. Now they've got 20 plus years of experience in health services, but they've only been franchising for 5 years. In 5 short years, they've not only grown their franchise business, but Carolyn Thurston has been elected to the International Franchise Association's board of directors. She sits in leadership of the IFA's Black Franchise Leadership Council, and she's been here for 5 years. 5 years. So when I talk about opportunity, and when we speak about where you can go and how you can grow, and what limits may be out there, most of them are self-imposed. And when you can see somebody like the Thurstons rise to the level of leadership in this organization and in this business in 5 years, on one hand, and you can see the depth of a family like the Drapers living the dream for 2 generations and continuing to go and grow, I once again want to leave you today with the questions: what's holding you back? We've talked about being in business for yourself and not by yourself. We've expressed how many opportunities exist in a wide variety of industries. We've kind of helped you understand the need to research your options, ask questions. It's not a one size fits all. So you really have to conduct a proper self-evaluation. Jim Fliss would spank if I didn't tell you. You have to be sure you dot your I's and cross your T's, have a proper business plan, know what you need to have fiscally, and then come with more rather than less. Thoroughly investigate the franchise system. John Draper, you expressed that numbers of times today. Make sure that they've got the right stuff to support themselves, much less you, and that they've got a culture that's in keeping and in alignment with your standards. And, realize that while you do all this for yourself and for your family, franchising equals jobs and economic growth, and it helps serve communities all over the place. And my goal is, especially in underserved communities that need those locations, to bring the money into the local communities and create opportunities for jobs and career pathing for those who need it, instead of running to the suburbs all the time for overpriced real estate and kids that don't want to work. So there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of ways to consider the wisdom of whether this makes sense for you or not. And you have a pool of people, some of whom just a fingernail's worth that you've met here today, all of whom stand behind you, ready, willing, and able to assist you in making the American dream something that you can bring home instead of a paycheck. We're a few minutes early today, folks. Unless somebody has a parting thought, I'm going to be really proud to say we end ahead of schedule instead of behind. Any thoughts, gentlemen, ladies, anybody out there?
Stan, you was talking about Calvin Gold when he started with his Wingstop. Believe it or not, I was on a real estate team that got his first and second location here in the Dallas-Fort Worth market. Then I had the pleasure to meet Mr. JD at the IFA. So we're talking about a big world, but it actually is a small world when you talk about the franchise world. Because if you're in this world, if you're in the franchise world, then if you go to the seminars, you go to the meetings, you be on a call, you find out how many friends that you have mutual friends with that share with your growth. As you and I, we was coming up to get our CFEs, we have no problem sharing knowledge with one another. So that's what I do like about this industry, that you have people that will share if you willing to ask.
Well said, Tim. And I've made a statement out of it over the years. Actually, in my 30 plus years in franchising, I've been a franchisor, I've been a supplier, I've been on different sides of the business. So today I wear a shirt that says FRM, but I've had Blimpie and I've had Maggie Moose and I've had others. Along the way, I've changed shirts, but I've collected people. And the literal thing about franchising is that in any other business, there may be 3 degrees of separation. In franchising, you have to add a decimal and a 0.3. You talk to anybody in our world long enough, and you're going to find 10 other people in common that each of you knew and had no idea that you were connected that way. Go on LinkedIn and just look at your profile, and it's amazing how many people you'll find that are in the franchising world that you may have been connected to in other ways and had no idea they were involved in franchising. Well, I think I see no more questions, so I want to thank Jim Fliss. I want to thank Karen White backstage at KeyBank, as well as Hayter, who has been backstage for us at the IFA, Ashley. Thank you again, John Draper and JD Draper. Phil Dunn, Tim Williams, man, you've been part of my world for a long time, and I hope for many more years. I want to thank you all for being here today, and I look forward to hearing tales of your successes as you toe into the waters and further explore franchising. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you being here.
Everybody have a
Thank you all.
great day.